Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Gov Insider's Festival of Innovation. I'm Shirley, Gov Insider's senior reporter, and I'll be your interviewer for today's Fireside chat, leading the government's RPA shift. Over the next half hour, we'll be discussing how RPA is transforming finance, HR, and procurement in Singapore's government. Leading this transformation is the agency Vital, which sits under the Ministry of Finance. And I'm joined by none other than the fantastic Dennis Lee, Chief Executive of Vital. A warm welcome to you, Dennis, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Shirley. Thanks for having me here.
It's our pleasure. Why don't you start us off by sharing a brief introduction of yourself and what you do at Vital?
Well, first, Vital. Vital was formed in 2006 as a department under the Ministry of Finance. We are a shared services organization. That means we provide shared services in the realm of finance, HR, and procurement to the entire public sector. We are one of the organizations that really work very quietly in the background. So I will not be surprised if viewers here, even viewers from Singapore, may not have heard of Vital. But think of Vital as the people who are processing your payroll, making the payments to your vendors, and all these very important transactions at the back end that if we do well, nothing happens, everybody's happy. But if we do not do well, there'll be huge implications and ramifications. So that is the shared services organization that I lead. I'm privileged to lead the organization. I am actually an officer from the Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore, and I've been seconded into this role for a period of time. So that's Vital and myself, Shirley.
Thanks so much for that, Dennis. And I understand you were appointed as Vital's Chief Executive last year, and that's right before the pandemic broke out, actually.
Yes.
So what have been your biggest lessons learned in the past year of leading the organization?
Yeah, so as it turns out, I was appointed 1st April 2020. And all of you will remember, I think it was 7 April 2020 that Singapore went into the circuit breaker. So it was quite a very exciting, interesting experience for myself because coming into Vital completely new, not knowing the people very well and not knowing the operations too well. When you think about it, all I could do at the beginning was to sit back, observe, encourage, and give guidance where I could, but yet learn very, very quickly to steer the organization forward. So Shirley, your questions about biggest lessons, I think first biggest lesson is, of course, don't panic in a crisis because everybody else is panicking. The last person to panic has to be the leader, right? You got to stay calm, stay cool, but you have to really work very fast to figure out what's important, prioritize, and move the organization forward. One big lesson I've learned and very heartened till today is I found great strength and resilience in the staff in Vital. In fact, I've told this story many times. They seem to know exactly what to do, right? Of course, coming in as a new chief executive, I asked them, right, COVID is coming. We may have to go into a full lockdown, circuit breakers, we call it. How do we ensure we keep the lights on? That was the number one important thing we needed to do, ensure that the payroll of more than 100,000 public servants were made promptly. And they knew exactly what to do. They had all their plans in place, so all I had to do was encourage them, motivate them, and if there were small roadblocks here and there, just push it away for them. Leading on with that, the second lesson and looking ahead would be how to emerge stronger. So one of the key things that we needed to do was to institutionalize this resilience and this strength in my staff, and then harness the energy going forward, because it's no longer business as usual today. I mean, we're going to live in a world of endemic COVID. It's no longer pre-COVID and post-COVID. So how to build that strength, that resilience in my staff to focus their energies to create an even stronger Vital. So I think that were my most important lessons, and looking ahead, that's what we're trying to do.
Fantastic. Sounds like it's been a long journey, even though it's only been a year.
Year and a half, yeah. I mean,
yeah. And then it's something that really stands out to me is the unique position of Vital in the center of government and actually overseeing HR and finance across the public service. But what do you think are the opportunities of such a position?
Thanks for that question. So first, let me clarify. We the role that Vital plays is an ops tech supporting role to support the HR domain, the finance domain, and the procurement domain. So when you say that we oversee these processes, technically we have to work with the policy owners and the functional leaders together to support them and to support the entire ecosystem. Yeah, so I have to make that clear because I do not want to, get myself into trouble with the HR leaders and the finance leaders. But you can see that our position at the center, linking up with these three buckets, HR, finance, procurement, is a very powerful one, right? We exist to process much of the transactions. So really the concept of us being an ops tech leader leads me to two areas of opportunities. First being Vital as a platform, and second, Vital as a partner, right? So at this central position, Vital as a platform, what can we do? And that is something that we are now working on and seeing ourselves grow in this area. Because as a platform, with all the transactions coming in, with us aggregating and achieving economies of scale, that's just part one. That's just part one of a shared services story. Part two is what can you then do when you bring all these transactions together and bring all these more than 100 ministries, HR and finance processes together, such that you can create greater value out of this. So that's a platform play. And I would say we copy that or we learn that kind of idea from the private sector. Maybe we can talk about that subsequently. In terms of partnerships, that's where the mental model shifts come, right? No longer are we just serving our customers. In fact, we try not to call them clients or customers because that kind of suggests a commercial transaction relationship. We are different from a shared services provider or commercial service provider in the private sector. We are a department within MOF, right? And we stand equal with the partners that we serve. So what can we do, right? And the thing that came to our mind is by playing a leadership role, we can actively transform the way corporate services in HR, procurement, finance are being done. We are not in a position, or we are not merely in a position where we stay here and take work from them and process it to them. We are here to help set standards, help push the boundaries, and leverage on our unique position at the center. Data analytics, machine learning, AI, all these can be applied into our work. So I see lots and lots of opportunities, and our journey has just started.
Definitely. Like what you said about Vital as a platform, sounds like a lot of the models that we're hearing, software as a service, cloud as a service, all these things that we're hearing in the private sector now.
If I may just add that, yeah, it's an adaptation. It's an adaptation and something we learn and get inspired from what the private sector is doing.
Definitely. And I want to go back to more on your partnerships with the private sector later, Dennis.
Okay.
But when you talk about, pushing the boundaries, I understand that Vital also got the mandate last year to become the government's robotics and automation lead for corporate services.
Oh, yes.
How has the journey been thus far? Do you have any interesting projects to share?
Yes, I do, but perhaps I take one step back to clarify what this leadership means and how it is different when you apply the concept of platform and partnerships to it. Traditionally, when you say and you appoint a leader in government to do something, it seems to connote that everything with regard to robotics and automation will have to come from Vital and all the other agencies that will just take a wait and see approach. After all, is Vital going to do it? Let them do it first. And then after that, they can follow, they can adapt. Now that I've introduced the idea of a platform and partner, and also the idea that really automation like RPA, it's already fairly well established across the Singapore government. There are many, many agencies that have started and in fact are even doing well, even better than Vital in certain areas. And Ministry of Home Affairs is one example, I believe. They were interviewed not too long ago by Gov Insider too. So the whole concept of this robotics and automation lead is we need to ask ourselves as a first question, how do we harness the collective good work done by more than 100 public sector agencies, bring them together in a platform so that we can cross-learn, we can collaborate and co-create new ideas. So if you think of it from a platform, in a way, we are no different from some of these incredible shopping platforms and search engines, right? Something as simple as creating a robotics and automation hub as well as a portal in a whole, at the center of government where all the agencies can come in, share use cases, share RPA scripts is already that powerful to start with, right? And that's what we are doing. In fact, we already have what we call an RPA bot library for the entire public service. And we are trying to expand that into what we call robotics and automation hub, where we want to extend beyond RPA. So with the partnership concept, I would also say, and I've been telling my staff, that let us harness the creative energies of our colleagues from other parts in the public sector and come in and create that platform for them to showcase their work. Now, this is something I feel quite passionate about. You see, in every agency across the public sector, in fact, any agency in the private sector, you always have HR department, finance department, procurement, they're doing work, right? But the mission of the agency typically is something else, right? So if you're a big firm selling products or selling IT, all that, you have huge, the center of gravity in every agency will be the core mission. No different in Singapore government. The center of gravity of all the different ministries and stat boards are their core mission. HDB is to build flats, NEA, LTA, all these are very well-known statutory boards that Singaporeans know. But behind these agencies, there must be a strong team of corporate support, HR, finance, procurement, and Vital can play that role to lend them. They're all doing good work. I'm so proud of them. But give them the platform to come together, right? To share ideas and to do even better and to get inspired by one another. Simply put, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel. We learn from the private sector and we learn from amongst ourselves as well. So I stress that as one of our roles in this robotics and automation lead, because there's just so much being done, but not enough of it being shared, at least in this HR, finance, and procurement domain. Second part will be then, all right, we need Vital at the center to also champion some of these changes that we want to bring in through the use of technology, right? To bring in, for example, cloud computing, more usage of cloud to do data analytics. Some of these, when I talk to the various agencies, they have ideas, but because you're all on your own, it's a little bit difficult to pull together the investments or to do the project on your own, unless you're a very large ministry. But for the rest of us, I think Vital as a platform can help. And once we create something at the center, it can be then scaled up for use by the rest of government. So this is the type of projects and these are the type of ideas we have as a robotics and automation lead. And once we put the structures in place and fire up the excitement and inspire the people, I believe lots and lots of new ideas will come about, because many of these technologies and many of these methods are out there. That's why I so happily accepted your invite to speak at this the Festival of Innovation, because it's about public-private partnership, about understanding what's available in the private sector that we can then adapt and bring in to the government as a whole. Thanks, Shirley.
Definitely. It sounds like Vital is really the connecting point between multiple different ministries to sort of share best practices on RPA and automation. Yeah, and Dennis, we do have a question from the audience about how Vital actually facilitates collaborations between like different ministries. Perhaps do you have an example to share to help our audience members with that?
Well, if the member is from the public sector or civil service, just come talk to us. It all starts by talking to us, because we know what's happening across, right? We are going to roll out, we have an RPA board library where we're going to roll out a much wider scale robotics automation hub where we're going to put use cases, we're going to put exciting technologies that your agency can tap on. But my people are so excited to talk to partners that come talk to us, because we also want to understand your needs. Right, we have received many requests and questions like, okay, how do you start with RPA? What software do you use? All these are very, very, very valid questions, and we can definitely share our experience as well as point you to other agencies that have either similar experience or taking a slightly different approach depending on what they do. Yeah, so we are here to help, almost like a consultant, but we're not a consultant, we're part of government. So our advice is always given free of charge. And of course, at the end of the day, if we have a service line that we think we can help you, for example, if you can insource some of the work to Vital, then we'd be happy to help you too. But come from the belief that a lot of robotics and automation work in the corporate corporate services domain, HR, finance, procurement, has to be done still at the agency end, because the whole ambition is not for Vital to provide the end-to-end services for every part of HR finance, for example, right? Mm-hmm. There will be parts, typically the higher value-added strategic parts of HR and finance that ought to be with the agency and ministry, right? But there are many transactional roles and many other kind of mundane, repetitive tasks that if you are facing a problem, it's very likely that somebody else in the whole ecosystem is facing the same problem. Mm-hmm. So let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's come together. Let's talk. Let's ask one another to use cases across, and let's learn and push the boundaries forward. That's what I mean by Vital as a platform. First, we need to start talking and build the strong networks.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And Dennis, perhaps for the benefit of our audience members outside of Singapore, even the private sector that is tuning in today, would you be able to share some advice or tips for these governments or companies that are looking to implement RPA within their organization?
Right. If you look at RPA per se, and I know this whole Fireside chat was about RPA, but really RPA is just one technology amongst many things, right? If you look at RPA per se, I think we need to dream big, but we do need to start small and act fast. Mm-hmm. So I think in many agencies I've been to, talked to, and looked at, everybody started small by experimenting with various programs, right? But the technology and the landscape out there is evolving so fast, right? Mm-hmm. Within the past 3-4 years, I've seen the product starting off as something really quite complicated. You had to send the staff to 2 weeks or 3 weeks of hardcore training, programming before they could get used to it. And now you are seeing more type of low-code solutions. You are seeing more use cases. You are seeing scripts that can be more easily reused. So yeah, I think now is the time, right? If you haven't started, because if you had started 5 years ago, you and I will all be commiserating just how hard it is. But now I can hand on my heart and tell you it's much easier now, because the solutions that are being rolled out today are far easier to use. And yeah, just start. I wouldn't claim to say that Vital is very far ahead in this. I've seen so many other private sector organizations do such great work, but at least the industry is matured enough and enough examples out there that you can really make a big go at it. So I don't have any specific advice per se. It's just that this is a great time to start that automation and, of course, bring your people along with it.
Definitely. And Dennis, what I've gathered from our conversation so far is that you're learning a lot from the private sector, and that's something that I wanted to touch on today. How is Vital actually partnering the private sector in your journey as a shared services arm of the Singapore government?
Well, we see ourselves taking a leadership role in exploring technologies that will benefit the HR, finance, and procurement domain, right? We see ourselves in an experimental role and as a platform role. So I'll give you one specific example, realm of HR. It's not appropriate for me to name any names here, but we looked at our HR processes across the whole of government and realized that, despite of us rolling out new ERP systems, the entire process of recruitment still seemed to be very manual and labor intensive. Why? Everybody sends us CVs, right? I mean, your CVs can be PDF and Word document, but they are still individual documents. The HR recruiter will sit there, you put in a portal, I have to download 100 CVs for a job, let's say, and then after that, you have to figure out whom you want to interview. And there's just a lot of work doing the sieving, the screening. After that, trying to figure out and the relevant processes. So if you ask yourself, which are the processes that can be streamlined and which are the processes that really require human, you realize that a lot of it at the beginning end could perhaps be automated. Better still, using AI to sieve out in advance, so that even at the recruiter stage, when he or she looks at the results, they can start to figure out, right, who may be a better candidate. These are all things we have in theory in our brains, and we go out and scour the industry, and hey, there seems to be very interesting technologies, typically cloud-based, that we could use. So we have started a pilot with a firm, And at our end, we fronted, but it's not just a Vital pilot. We actually brought on board about 7 other public sector agencies to do this pilot, to test, right, the concept of whether this cloud-based solution can really speed up and make it far, far more efficient. And in order to shorten our recruitment times, right, in order to allow us to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to do the work better. So to free up the HR officers' precious time instead of sieving through tons and tons of CVs to really focus on the candidates that make the most sense. Will that work? I'm not sure. But if you talk to me in another 6 months to 9 months, I probably will be able to tell you a better answer. So that is one very powerful role Vital can play as a platform, because we know the pains across. We're able to curate and put together the use cases. And even if there's no immediate technology that's available, then our role is almost like a hub. I would call it an innovation or a use case hub, right? We are here, we have all these issues. I really open and welcome the private sector with all the wonderful technologies you have to come pitch to us, right? To tell us what your technology, what are the pain points they can solve. Also bearing in mind that in the private sector, many of them face similar pain points, right? In procurement, and finance, and HR. Tell us what problems you have solved in the private sector. And that will allow us to make the connections and the platform, because we are the central agency for shared services now, but we don't claim to have any technology, right? Because I don't build stuff or create stuff, but we can play that role. And that's very important, because if you don't translate our needs and use cases and apply it to the appropriate technology, then it's not going to work. Second point I wanted to shout out, because you mentioned partnerships, and sorry if it's a little bit by the side, is we also partner with organizations to support persons with disabilities. And I'm very proud to share that in Vital, we are a very inclusive organization, right? And recently we were certified to the Enabling Mark Gold Award, because we do hire a fairly large number of persons with disabilities, 3% of my workforce, in fact. And I would say this is only possible through close collaboration, right? With the Autism Resource Center, with the Society for Physically Disabled, with SG Enable, and all these other organizations, because we learn to curate, we learn to create the conditions where we can create meaningful jobs, right? Valuable jobs for persons with disabilities. So this is yet another example of why Vital and how Vital can be successful as a platform.
Definitely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Dennis. Wanted to go back to something that you mentioned very briefly earlier, about how you're planning to bring your staff along in this journey as you adopt more technologies.
Yes, that's my favorite topic.
I understand that as many agencies look to adopt different technologies, the talent gap is a very real and pressing issue. So how are you actually training your staff to keep up with the rapid digitalization that we are seeing today?
Thanks for the question. So that leads me to my third P. So early on, I talked about platform, partnerships. So you must always have a third P. It's called people, right? People. Without good people, your organization is nothing. Every leader needs to know that, realize that, and therefore you need to invest and make sure that people come along with you and then get the correct training. So I think over time, the people in Vital understand the need for change. And in fact, I'm excited, I would think, about the change, because no longer are we transactional in nature, right? We are there as a central agency to provide more value, to create more value for the ecosystem. Then the question now is, what skills do they need? What training do they need? So since at least it has been 2 to 3 years ago now, we've been asking that question. So internally within Vital, we do have what we call a shared services competency framework. And within this framework, we have made sure and identified the areas of competency that we need to upskill all our staff, including, for example, areas like data analytics, right? So it's a very systematic way. We carve out and analyze the kind of roles our officers need to fill going forward in this new environment. And then we curate and design and send them all back to school. So just to share, the first area of gap or needs, training needs we identify that we urgently need to ramp everybody's up in terms of skills was data analytics, right? Because at the center, we deal with lots and lots of data transactionally. So in the past, if you are just dealing with it transactionally, it doesn't really matter. You don't really need to analyze the data. But as a platform, if you're getting data from more than 100 agencies, there's so much untapped resources. So we have sent, or in the process of sending all our officers back to school, we have collaborated with a local tertiary institution. Officers are either going for a specialist diploma in data analytics or a certificate in data analytics, specially curated for them. And it's not easy because there are always demands on operations. So operations managers will say, no, I can't, I don't have the bandwidth, I can't send my officer, right? So we do have to try to spread it out and also sometimes hire additional resources to help it over time. I share that because you definitely need management attention to this. And the first run of the certificate of data analytics has been fantastic. They even did a data hackathon, which was amazing.
Wow.
And the hackathon, one team actually used a cloud-based analytics solution where they took some data, put it in the cloud, learned some model, and they came up with a predictive model in 2 days. Mind-blowing. So trust that your staff have a lot more that they can give as long as you give them the opportunity and you create opportunities for them.
Fantastic. That's really exciting. And Dennis, we're just reaching the final minutes of our chat today. So if you could sum it up in one sentence, what would you like to say to all of your vital staff and colleagues from the public service who are tuning in right now? Any words of encouragement?
Well, to my staff, thank you very much for joining us on this journey. It has been a tremendous a journey, and the best is yet to come, really. And as we search forward and we skill up to be the central agency for corporate shared services, there's just so much more we can do. For my public sector colleagues listening in, Vital is here to support you. We are no longer just a transactional outfit. We are the central agency for shared services. We are the OpStack agency supporting finance, HR, and procurement. Come talk to us. We are not just here to quote unquote sell you our services. No, we are also here to share our knowledge, and we also want to learn from you. So thank you very much. It's a tremendous journey, and we also thank all our partners in the private sector who have helped us in many ways.
Perfect. And that's a great note to end our fireside chat on. Thank you so much, Dennis, and to all the audience members for joining us today. And with that, we've come to the end of the first day of our Festival of Innovation. So do come back tomorrow as we have an incredible program lined up for you. We'll be discussing innovations in healthcare, sustainability, and digital education with Singapore's Ministry of Health, Sri Lanka's first innovation lab, the Citra Social Innovation Lab, and more. We hope to see you there.